cosmic consciousness, extraterrestrials and UFOs, sacred geometry, ancient civilizations, spiritual connection, the quantum universe. All of these topics and so much more with your host, Sev Tuck, on Alien Spirit with Sev.
Hello, welcome to Alien Spirit. I'm Sev, and I have two guests today who are experiencers from North Carolina, which is where I currently live. Their names are Indi and Johnny. Indi came out about 2 years ago, and Johnny is coming out for the first time right now, which is a big deal, especially if you're an experiencer, you'll understand. It's not easy to come out. It's actually rare. There's a lot of personal introspection and paradigm shifts that have to happen before an experiencer is comfortable talking fully about what happened. And there's also stigma. It still exists, maybe not as much as before, but our society still does snicker. And that can really be catastrophic for relationships and for careers. So for a couple of really good reasons, we're going to keep Johnny backstage. We're not going to see him, but we will hear him. He will tell us and narrate his story with drawings of his, describing what happened to him. My heart is very full right now. Because I decided to become an experiencer advocate because of Kathleen Martin and how much she helped me and changed my life. And so I decided I want to be an experiencer advocate to provide space for experiencers to heal and become self-empowered. I never expect an experiencer to write a book or to be on TV, or to do a radio show. But when it happens, it's very glorious to me. Coming out to oneself is a profound service to the self, and coming out publicly, I believe, is a vital service to mankind. Thank you, Indi and Johnny. We're going to start with Indi, whom I've known for 3 years. We've maintained contact and we've become friends. Indi is an entrepreneur. She has a couple of businesses here in North Carolina. She's a dog trainer and a Reiki healer. Welcome, Indi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Indi has had a lot of experiences since childhood, and unfortunately, we don't have time to talk all about all of them right now. Maybe Indi can come back and tell us about the rest of them, but she's going to tell us about a couple of them. So please, Indi, tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I'll briefly go through kind of what was going on during childhood, just to give you a little bit of background, and then there are a couple of experiences that were really, really much more up close and personal. So I'll get a little further into those. So basically, as I was growing up, my mom would tell us this story that she was outside hanging clothes on the clothesline one day when I was an infant and my sister was like 5. And my dad wasn't home. She was hanging clothes on the clothesline, and the next thing she knows, a massive triangular craft was just over her. Like, it came in really quick, and it blocked out the whole sky. It was so big and so close. And she said that she just looked up into the like the bottom of the craft, and there was like a kind of like an opening in the center. And she just got like transfixed on this. And the next thing she knew, it was gone. So she told us this story when we were kids, and I grew up just knowing that there were craft and there were beings from other planets, and it just was like normal in our family to just kind of accept, like, of course there are beings from other planets. Like, why would we be the only ones? That makes no sense at all. Like, we're in this massive universe. So I was very lucky to grow up in a family where that was just a given. So I started having quite a few experiences when I was like a teenager, early adulthood, and that continued and still continues. And I'm just checking my notes here so I don't forget anything. So yeah, so when I was younger, I would say probably early 20s, that's when things started picking up more. And I would see, craft. I lived in front of a golf course, and I would see craft over the golf course. I would see like weird lights. And a lot of times there were other people with me, and they were seeing them too. So that was helpful to know that, like, okay, this is not just me. Other people are seeing this. And they would be really close to our house, like right in front of our house, basically right across the street. And I would have like weird dreams, and I would see weird lights outside of the windows and stuff pretty regularly when I would be going to bed. But when I was, let's see, it would have been like 2017. So I was upper 20s. I went to an observatory with a friend of mine, Tim, and this observatory is it's like a deck off the side of a mountain, and there's no light pollution. You go up there, you can see all the stars, and it's absolutely beautiful. So we would drive up there. It was at Mountain Lake. If you're familiar with like Virginia, this was in Virginia at the time. So we would go up to the Mountain Lake Observatory and just stargaze and talk and, whatever. And one night we were out there, and I noticed that there was like a star just down and to the right from the moon, but it was like kind of moving. And I was like, that's not a star. What is that? And I kept my eye on it, and I was like, it's getting bigger. And I asked Tim, I was like, do you see this? And he was like, yeah, I wasn't going to say anything. He was like, I don't know what that is. So we just kept watching it, and it was getting bigger and bigger and closer until eventually we noticed that it was like actually down pretty low and moving over like ridge after ridge after ridge. And so where we were on the mountain, it was like mountains going around both sides, like ridges like going down. So it would come over ridge after ridge, and it was getting quite a bit closer. And it came within, I don't really know how to gauge the distance, but within, I would say like 100 to 200 feet of us. And it was a massive, spherical shaped, what I would call an orb, but it was physical. It wasn't just light. It was like physical. And the color was like a salt lamp. So, that kind of like orangish, pinkish color. And it actually kind of, the glow off of it was kind of like a salt lamp too, but it was huge. It was as big as you could fit like a really big tour bus in this orb sphere thing. So it was coming closer and closer to us, and I was super transfixed on this craft. And I was like, whoa, can you believe this? What is going on? And I was really excited. I actually had no fear. I was really excited. And my friend Tim freaked out, and he was like, we have to go now. And he started running towards my car. And I was the one who was driving that night. I had the keys. So I was like, okay, I can't leave him stranded. So I took off towards the car, got in the car. And when I started driving down the mountain, it was like the very first curve. So I got back on the road, and I'm going around this first curve, and another one comes up from behind the trees and then comes over our car. So it was almost like it had been waiting for us to get in the car and start driving. And there were now two of them. So this other orb shaped, spherical shaped craft came over the car, and we both had this very weird sensation of like a tight band around the head, like over the third eye and around the head. And it was like a really tight band, and then this magnetic pull at the crown. So it was like this, it felt like, like very strong magnetism above the head. So he said, "Do you feel that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You need to go faster." So I'm like flying down this mountain road. And the next thing we know, it's I don't know how much later, and I'm pulling onto his street in Blacksburg, which was like 30 minutes down the road. So we were both like really dazed. I mean, I didn't even realize that I had lost time. I didn't have the framework for any of this. So I really didn't know what happened. I was just like, whoa, like I don't remember driving down the mountain. That was really weird. And I was just like dazed. I also wasn't all that concerned about it at the time because I don't know. There was just something after these experiences. A lot of times it's almost like, at least in my experience, almost like I can be subdued in a way, like not too concerned. Um, So that happened, and he still will not talk about it to this day. So um, it's interesting. I've tried to ask him about it, and he just shuts down the conversation immediately. He's like, "Nope, I'm not going there," and that's totally fine. I totally understand that. But I got really curious about it. When I moved to Wilmington, a lot started happening, and I had an experience in Oak Island, which is about 45 minutes south of here. And I went down to visit some friends and get dinner. And I was going to a sound bath afterwards, but I had like 20 minutes to kill. So I got a really strong, intuitive like message to go to a very specific spot on the beach where I used to go when I was growing up. So I went to 72nd, the entrance to the beach at 72nd, which was like pretty far down the island from where I was and wouldn't give me as much time on the beach. But I had this like really clear knowing that that's where I was supposed to go. So I did. And I parked and I was like, it looked like there was a helicopter over the ocean. And so I was like, okay, didn't think twice about it. Got out of the car, walked out to the beach, and realized that is not a helicopter. It was a light that was like spinning really quickly, but then it looked like almost like light beams coming off of it, but the light was in like right angles. It was very weird. I don't know how to explain it. And it was spinning and it would get really big and then really small and really big and really small. And I took a bunch of pictures and videos of this craft because I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And I even called my partner at the time and I was like, I might, and I made a joke. I was like, I might get abducted, just letting you know. And he was like, oh, I'll take pictures. And, so I did. I was taking pictures and videos. And when I got home, and I took like a million pictures. When I got home and I went to look back at the pictures, there were like 2 left. There were like only 2 on there. It was really weird. And then the next day I woke up and like 2 more had been re-downloaded on to the phone. It was very strange. And there was like a video that came back on the next morning as if I had just taken the video. The timestamp was like as if I had just taken it. It was very weird. I've never had anything like that happen with my phone. That was the only time. So in the video, I was able to see that there was actually a light that came out of the ocean. There was a fishing boat out there. And so there was an orb kind of over the boat. And then there was another one that came out from the water and lifted up and was like hovering above the water. And there was all of this like purple light kind of like flashing. And I couldn't see this with my like visually when I was taking the videos. I was just able to see it on the video later. I was able to like zoom in and see more. And it was like this purple kind of flashing light. And then that was it. So that night, I go to sleep and I have this really weird dream. And in that dream, I was on a craft at the bottom of the ocean. And there was a tall gray in front of me. And we were communicating telepathically. And he was showing me these images. And they did like medical test kind of stuff. I don't really know exactly what was happening. I know there was like a drill like sensation, like an energetic drill of some sort in my third eye and my crown. And then there were like these other kind of, I don't know what kind of medical tests that were going on. And then I was talking to this gray, and telepathically he was showing me these images, and the paintings that Sev, that you have, were from that experience. So this one is the gray that I was talking to, and he was holding like this corn type plant, but it wasn't corn. It was like much shorter and like wider, and he was talking about essentially like, this is what humans will be eating in the future. Something about like nourishing humans differently later. I'm not really sure. I can't, I couldn't make out. I can't remember exactly everything that he was saying, but he was showing me this plant. And then he showed me an image of the planet. And on this image, so I did the best that I could to represent it in this painting, but there was a lot more going on there. So on the planet, there was essentially like a black sort of like cloud of energy around the planet, and it was like over the entire planet and kind of pushing in on the Earth. And then there were like little dots of light that were showing up all over the planet. And what he was telling me was that these lights are essentially people awake, like waking up. So it had to do with consciousness. And these lights would like flicker on, and then they started to create a grid. So he showed me this like light grid, and then he showed me light coming off the planet and like breaking through this cloud, this black cloud that was surrounding the planet. So that was fascinating. He also showed me images of like planet Earth with cars and trucks and trains and planes and all the things kind of, all over it. And then he would show me oil drills, and he was showing me how the oil is actually the blood of the Earth. And so how he showed it to me was that we're going down with these oil drills, and we're pulling up this oil, and then we're putting it into our vehicles, and then it comes out as like this blood smoke, like red smoke is how. So he was literally showing like the destruction of the planet. And then he showed me a bunch of like storms, like crazy flooding and hurricanes and tornadoes and all of this. And he just like, I think he was trying to show me kind of what was coming. And I'm not, that's not to scare anybody. I don't know. This is just how I was understanding it. That's not to say that it is. It's just how I was understanding it. Yeah, so that when I woke up from that dream, I was like, okay, that was not a dream. I was like that. And I didn't know what to call it, but I just called it like a dream, not dream, because it wasn't just a dream. Yeah. And so I ended up going into hypnotherapy to start looking into what was going on. And I did find a lot. Many, many things. I found, I went back to the time when I was on the observatory, out of the observatory, and found that there was some hybrid program type stuff going on. That was really hard to take in and like wrap my mind around. It took me a long time to like even find the ground again. I was so ungrounded and just like, what? Like, I mean, my entire world just kind of collapsed around me because I just couldn't understand. It meant that everything that I understood was not actually true. And I had grown up knowing that there were other beings and there were craft. I had no idea that I was actually interacting with them in any way. I had no idea that these things were happening, and it actually threw me into a state of fear for quite a while. It took a long time for my nervous system to settle down after I started finding the hybrid type stuff that was going on. I also found lots of other experiences that were really profound and beautiful and not scary, really, really beautiful. Yeah, so it was interesting. I dove into even things back when I was a child. I even dove back into what happened when the craft came over the house, when my mom was hanging up the clotheslines, and I found things there. And, there was a tall gray who was holding me, and he was like showing me to a few that were he like held me up, and there were a few around him, and they took me onto the craft, and my mom and my sister too. And I just saw them like leaning over me, and they said, "She's already contaminated." And I was just an infant. And what I gathered was that was like contaminants in the environment that was already in my body. And so it was like kind of like gauging what was happening to the human body on the planet with the like the pollution and whatever else. So it was just really interesting. I mean, I've just been piecing together bits and pieces over time. And then I actually ended up going down a road of like setting some boundaries. And I worked with my teacher who's a shaman, and we worked on setting boundaries and working through some like contracts and past life stuff and all of that. Since then, I've had far fewer experiences, and when I have, it hasn't gotten as intense. So for me, that was the route that I decided to go. And yeah, so it's been, things have shifted since that time. And yeah, and more recently, I just had a craft come over the house that I was staying at in Leland, and it was midnight, and I had just rolled over, looked at the clock, and then noticed there was a craft outside my window. This was like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, maybe. And I saw a craft outside the window, and it was like really low and moving over the house. And it was so low, it looked like it was going to hit the roof. So I actually started like praying, and I was like asking for protection because I didn't know what was going on. And I was just praying for protection. And then I had some very strange dreams that came that night. And but yeah, but as I was as the craft was coming over the house, there were also 2 fighter jets that flew directly over the house at midnight.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So they were aware. The military is very aware.
Oh, they know you. They know who the experiences are. They do.
Yeah.
I think that's what MIB is all about. I know there's more. I know you have more, Indy.
Yeah.
But thank you. That was a lot right there.
Yeah.
So thank you. You described it beautifully.
Thank
so
you.
What I'd like to do now is just put you backstage and bring Johnny out. And he has an interesting look to him. Thank you, Indy. I'm going to put you back after Johnny talks. We'll all talk, the 3 of us together.
Sure.
Okay. Hello, Johnny.
Hello. I know you can't see me, but can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you so much. Johnny and I met 2 years ago, and we've stayed in touch. And he has a very unusual story. I've met one other person who's had similar experiences, but I do believe that there are other people who've seen what Johnny has seen. And so this is the first time Johnny's telling his story. And there's also another interesting element to Johnny's story, which I'm going to get to later. So Johnny, please tell us what happened.
Okay. Well, my experience occurred. It was October of 2016, and I had gone to sleep this night in the guest room of my house. It was actually my kids' room at the time, and so I was by myself in the room, and in my sleep, I had the sensation of leaving my body, or the sensation of dying, and I felt like I had died or was dying, and I had these moments of worrying about my family and my life, and then that kind of just went away. It just kind of dissipated, and I felt at peace, and I felt like I was in motion or traveling somehow, and I kind of just accepted that this was my end, and I was going on to whatever happened next. And it turns out I found myself standing in a like a hilly, grassy field, not unlike a cow pasture. It was green and grassy. There were trees in the distance and these rolling hills, and I was just there by myself at first, and I, you know, I'm still trying to, make sense of if this is, is this the afterlife? Am I in some kind of, other realm or something? But um, I ended up seeing a figure, and it was the typical Men in Black kind of looking figure, black suit, black hat, uh, white shirt with a tie, black shoes. But I could not make out a face. I didn't see a face. Um, I didn't hear a voice, but I communicated with this person um, telepathically, and I was like, well, who are you? What's going on? I'm trying to make sense of my afterlife essentially, and it basically led me just up a hill a little bit, and there was this door protruding out of the side of this hill, and it was almost like like one of the Hobbit houses from Lord of the Rings or something, but the door was a very institutional military kind of looking door, and next to the door was this it was a box of some type, and there were, like, it was mounted to the wall somehow, and there were syringes inside. Each syringe, maybe 4 or 5 syringes, and each one had some kind of green liquid in it. And I immediately had the thought to this Men in Black character that I don't want a shot. I don't like needles. I don't want anything to do with this. And it was like he just he just like put my mind at ease. It was more like, this just has to be done. You won't feel anything. It was kind of reassuring, um, but it was more like he was in control of me making the judgment to do it. I I felt like he had control and was just kind of explaining things as we went, so to speak. But so he takes the syringe and he just gets it close to my wrist, and it was like something happened to my skin before the needle even touched it. My skin moved and somehow met the needle and took in the whatever substance was inside. I didn't feel any particular, effect of it, or I didn't feel any different after this. But that was essentially, that was it. And I was led into this, through the door into this room, and it was a fairly large dome shaped, kind of oblong dome shaped room that had some kind of like futuristic looking console on both sides, on the long sides of it. uh, you know I didn't see any buttons or anything. It just looked like a countertop almost, but it was sloped a little bit. And I didn't, i- in the center of the room was this, like a it was like a smaller room protruding out of the floor, and it had 4 windows. It was a rectangular shape, and each side of it had a window that you could see through and down into the space below. And I couldn't really see at that point what was in there, but the being or person I was with led me to a door on the other side of this room. And when I went inside, it looked like a almost like a TV studio set, like the kind of place where they would maybe film something like a talk show, maybe, or something like that. There was like a stage kind of area at one end of it, and the tiered seating levels, and it looked, I didn't know what else to compare it to, but it looked like the set of maybe, like the Phil Donahue or something like that. And when I was in there, I see this person or being sitting in a chair at the front of this, facing away from me, like aimed towards a screen. And this person was manipulating these buttons, pushing buttons, and um, doing something. It was almost like playing an instrument, like playing a piano or typing, but it was with these weird keys and real, it was just strange. And this whole time I'm still, I'm like, I'm confused. I'm frustrated because I know that this at this point isn't the afterlife, and I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
And so it was sometime around there where I noticed the presence of two other beings, and it was two human males. They looked like twins, but one of them was in a wheelchair and had, maybe like Lou Gehrig's disease or MS or ALS or something, and it was like almost like a younger version of Stephen Hawking. And he they were communicating with me telepathically, and I don't know if the other twin was, his brother or someone that just looked like him, or I don't know what, but I got the impression that they were together, and maybe one was the caretaker or something like that, or they had some kind of relationship. But they communicated to me that the person in the chair manipulating the keys and buttons was referred to as pi. Like uh, the Greek symbol pi, and that he was either creating, writing, or manipulating some kind of code, like a computer code, and it was kind of being displayed on the screen. I could see that, but I couldn't really make out what was on the screen. It was just, it looked like lines, like binary code or something. And so at this point, I'm really frustrated at just how bizarre the situation is to me. I know that I'm not in some kind of, any afterlife I've ever heard of, if and so I know something is going on, but I don't know what. And I'm a naturally curious person, and I was really frustrated that I just didn't know what was going on. And I think that these twins sensed it, or interpreted this or something, and they asked me, well, what do you want to know? And I felt almost offended at being asked this. It was like a kid being at a toy store and being given like 3 seconds to pick something. Is kind of what it felt like to me. And so I just said something sarcastic. I said, I don't know. I'd like to peer into the eyes of God or something. It was like that. Just a little sarcastic quip back to him, um, expecting something else, expecting them to say something. But they just said, okay. And the men in black figure came back into the room at this point, and I went with him back into the first room that I had entered, the long, oval shaped dome room. And in the center of the room, like I said, it had this. It almost looked like a bus stop. The little, they have glass on three sides kind of thing. It was like that, but with four sides, and it was just protruding out of the floor. And he led me over to the edge, to the window of it. And when I looked in, I could see down below me an area that seemed like maybe the size of a basketball court or something. There were these. kind of rows of what looked like computer servers or something, but they were made out of what looked like liquid metal or liquid metal tubes, and they were fluctuating and pulsing and changing in size, and the whole thing seemed malleable, almost like the um, I don't know, like mercury or something. And as I'm looking down there, I see something coming out of it, and this like arm coalesced out of this liquid metal stuff, and it came up to the window almost like it moved like the if anyone's ever seen the movie The Abyss, when the bubble thing comes up through the bottom of their ship and is moving around inside their ship. It moved kind of like that, but it was made out of this liquid metal stuff, and on the end of it, it had what looked like a large camera lens. Or it looked like an eye, but it looked more like a camera lens than an iris or something. And it came closer to the window as I was standing there, and then I don't know if it blinked or it flashed, but when it did, I had the sensation of, like, if you could flip pages of a picture book in your face and you see all these different images all at once, and each one came with the feeling of being there, the wind blowing on you, the smell, the heat or the cold, like each and like rapid, really rapidly, just one after another, bam, 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 bam. And it was really overwhelming. And but what I was seeing was one image, and I don't remember all of them because there was a lot, but I kept seeing this kind of reoccurring theme of an eye made in art throughout various points in time. I saw what looked like maybe a Hopi Indian lady or a Native American in the American Southwest, weaving what looked like a god's eye dream catcher, kind of like a diamond eye shape, and she was hanging them on a bush. And I saw another image of people painting with their fingers and mud on rock walls, making the shape of an eye. I saw uh, the shape of an eye being chiseled in wood and stone, and just all throughout these kind of different settings and time of people making this image of an eye. And this, I don't know how long any of this experience took, uh, but after getting the sensation of all these images and senses, I kind of came to, and I found myself just standing in the corner of that room by myself, like I had, blacked out or something, and they just kind of put me in the corner to recuperate or something like that. And when I start to realize what's going on again, I look over, and at the other end of the room, I see the Men in Black person communicating with a tall, thin being that was blacked out. And I don't know how to explain it other than maybe like a shadow in 3 dimensions. I just couldn't see through it. It was black. It had blurred edges like a mirage almost, but it was black. But it was in the shape of this tall, thin being that looked like it could have been maybe 7 feet tall, give or take a few inches. And it did not have a large head. It seemed to have a smaller head, from what I could make out. Like I said, it was just like a shadow or something. But um, I don't know what they were communicating about. But I was led by the door to leave, the same door I'd come into, and I noticed on the console or the countertop or whatever it was next to the door that there was this strange coin looking thing. It was maybe the size of American silver dollar, but a little thicker and had, some shape to it, and it looked weird. And I thought, well, damn it, I'm gonna take this thing as just some kind of proof or something, just to have it was like something I could hold on to. So I grabbed it and I put it in my pocket. And no, nothing was said to me about it. I was led out of the door, walked down the hill a little bit, and there was what looked like a World War II Willys military Jeep waiting on us. And there was a person driving it. I couldn't see their face. I did get a sense from them that they were a happy person, that they were like, I don't know why I sensed anything about them, but I got a sense that they were a happy person doing something they liked, is kind of the feeling I got. And the Men in Black guy got into the passenger side. I got in the back, and we drove a little ways back into the field. And then the Men in Black guy got out. I got out. The Jeep drove away. And the Men in Black guy stuck his hand out, and I knew that he wanted the thing that I had taken. And and I knew that it wasn't an option, or, like I said, it was like he was kind of in control of the decision I was going to make. I felt like, and I felt compliant in it. But I gave it to him, and he kind of just like rubbed it between his fingers a little bit and tossed it a few feet in front of him, and it just ballooned into this craft that was maybe a little bit bigger than a jet ski, but it was totally encapsulated, and it had a top portion to it, and it cracked open for somebody to get inside. And he starts to get in this thing, and I was like, well, wait a minute, what now? I was like, I was so frustrated that I was just being told nothing and left in this field essentially. And he communicated back that that's it, that's all there is. And I was like, that's it? And he was like, yep. And then the lid closed on that craft, and it shot off seemingly at the speed of light into the sky. And I'm just standing in this field at night by myself. And then the next sensation I had was waking up, in my son's room, kind of gasping for air a little bit, and totally freaked out. And I started writing it down, writing down the what I could remember at the time. And um, I I wasn't in a position at the time to really talk with anyone about it. And it was some time before I made an actual report, mostly because I didn't, I wasn't sure it wasn't just some crazy dream I had. But in the days immediately after this occurred, I noticed that outside um, of my house, where the bed where I was at was sleeping in, was by a window, and there was a discoloration on the side of the house, around the window, that looked kind of like when it was a vinyl siding house, but like, I don't know if you've ever seen vinyl siding that's been sun bleached really bad. It almost gets like powdery kind of. It just discolors a little bit, and there was a discolored area around the window of the room there, and also the top of the tree next to it was dead. A pretty large portion of the tree somehow died in a matter of a day or two and turned brown, uh, inexplicably. Um, but that's my story. I don't.
It's a good one. That's a good story. You did a great job telling it for the first time, Johnny.
Well, thank you.
Really.
I just, I mean, really, for me, sharing the story is more about, my own kind of just trying to
Yeah.
find some answers about, if anyone else has had any kind of similar anything of this story, because I've done some research into it, and I haven't. I mean, there's a few things, but it seems weird that. I mean, I just haven't. I haven't heard anyone that had a similar story, and I would like to know more if someone has or had.
Right. So as I said earlier, so far I've only met one person who has a very similar memories as you do. What's interesting is what Joe McMoneagle saw, who's a very well-known remote viewer, worked for the government. And I do believe that there's a connection between what happened to Johnny and what Joe McMoneagle saw in these 4 mountains around the world, subterranean bases that were all connected, and they were all emitting frequencies or a message, something, to a stationary object in space over Earth. Why, we don't know. And he also said that even though all of these bases are connected like a spider web, they haven't been turned on yet. So here are some images. There's a very popular YouTube show called What Files? And Johnny actually sent me this video because there's so many similarities to what Joe McMoneagle saw in these bases. So this is very similar to the machine that Johnny saw. And this is very similar to that eye of God. Now, Joe McMoneagle didn't draw these, but the similarity is uncanny. And then when I saw this and remember this guy, and then Joe McMoneagle saw this, I was like, whoa, that's incredible. Isn't it, Indi?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
There, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's mind-blowing, really.
Did anything that Johnny see align with anything that maybe you've experienced in the past?
Not specifically. I can definitely the sensation of like my energy leaving my body and coming back into my body, that I've definitely felt. The kind of medical stuff, I've had a lot of like medical type stuff happen on craft, and but a lot of times I can't really see what all they're doing. I'm usually kind of like paralyzed or strapped down, and then things are happening and I can't see everything that's happening. So yeah, I mean, this is a different story from anything I've heard before, and it's really wild.
It really is.
Yeah. And so interesting with the Men in Black sort of.
And those other shadowy beings.
Yeah.
That seem more robotic. They don't seem to have any emotion.
Indi, there was actually a part of your story that kind of resonated with me, was when you were talking about when you said the triangle craft was over you as a child, that they had examined you and said that you were like already tainted or something like that.
Yeah, contaminated.
Contaminated. And when, in my experience, when I was with the 2 men, the guy in the wheelchair and the other guy, I got the impression that they were looking for something or trying to find out something about me mentally. My experience didn't feel medical. I mean, other than having the injection initially, but I didn't see anything like a lab or doctor's kind of setting. But I did get the impression that they were looking for something or trying to, but that I wasn't it. I didn't have what they wanted, or there was something wrong with me, or something that made it, I'm not the one, or whatever. But
Yeah.
that was just something in your story that kind of stuck out to me.
That's really interesting. It's almost like a scanning sort of like like, and I don't know how they were knowing this as far as the contamination, but I didn't see any tools. They just knew.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a scanning the energy or scanning the body, or I don't know, but that's really interesting.
Mhm.
What an experience. I'm just like mind blown. That's one of the most amazing stories I've heard, and I've listened to like so many experiencer stories, and that's one of the
It's
most notable, I would say, stories I've heard.
Yeah,
well,
and your level of detail, Johnny, that
Mhm.
you have is really
well,
unusual as well.
that's the thing is, once once I got interested in this subject and started kind of seeing what was the norm for these situations, what people tend to usually experience. Most of the details, from what I could tell, seem to come out through like regression or hypnosis and stuff. And I woke up instantly and started writing things down. Like I don't. I could tell that something was going on with me. Like I was not in control of my autonomy somehow. Like,
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know if they had some kind of ability or some power over me to make me comply and make me feel okay with complying.
Yes.
But at no point in my experience did I feel scared or threatened or anything like that. I only felt frustration and confusion because, like I said, I thought I died first.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
And
was
then you realize this isn't heaven. What
well,
is it?
like I don't know what happens when you die, but I knew that wasn't it.
Right.
So
Well, we have a couple of minutes left, so I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to say your last few words. And also, if anyone would like to contact Johnny or Indy or me, please email me, sev@planetsev.com, and my website is planetsev.com. Okay, Johnny, you want to say something? We have 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes. You want to say something, and then
well,
Indy can say goodbye too.
I would just like to thank you for the opportunity to share the
Oh, you're
story,
welcome.
and if I hope that somebody could have some kind of information about it, or if someone else has had an experience like that and they are afraid to share it, contact Sev. I would like to know more about, because like I said, it's a pretty profound situation, and I would like to know a lot more about it. But any bit would help me, just
Okay,
just to have a little understanding. So thank
thank
you.
you. Indy?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's always good to see you and to connect with the experiencer community and the people out there who are just interested in these experiences. And I'm just very grateful, and I'm really glad that I was able to join.
This is, as I see it, doing a service for mankind, as I said earlier. So thank you very much for coming out, because it does help other experiencers, and it helps non-experiencers too. It
Mhm.
helps society understand that this is real and it's not going away. And
Yeah.
everyone has to start to face the reality of this. Thank you for a terrific show, Johnny and Indy, and thank you everyone who's watched and listened.